Hey, BNC family, it is Scott. It is 6:04 on Thursday evening on the, let's see here, July 14th. And, what I'd said to you guys on Sunday, and then I think we sent out an email, was that we would have a quick video. We would do like a special I4 Year Alive where we would catch up and kind of look a little bit at Nehemiah Chapter 6. We had the missionaries here this past week, and we looked at how we could work Chapter 6 in. Did we kind of divide it between the week before and the week after when we're getting into 5 and 7. And this was the one that kind of made the most sense, was to kind of do it this way. So like a normal life where I'm not gonna have any questions, but feel free to comment and ask whatever's going on. We're gonna, like I said, just gonna work through a little bit of Nehemiah 6. It won't take long, 7 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that. But if you are watching, drop a quick little note down below and just let me know that that you're there. I greatly appreciate it, just so we can interact a little bit. Or just say hi. Or normally on Sunday mornings, we let people, they kind of tell me what the temperature is or where they happen to be watching from, or they're at the beach, they're enjoying the week, whatever it happens to be. Hey, good evening, Roxanne. Good evening. We don't get to say that very often. So yes, good evening. So thanks for being on. Thanks for chatting for a couple of minutes. Hopefully you had a chance to read Nehemiah Chapter 6. I'm not going to read it evening. Oops, Pastor. What did you say? Oh, pad tour. Oh, okay. Well, whatever. Hopefully you had a chance to read Nehemiah Chapter 6. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to highlight a couple of verses. I might read like 4 verses or 5 verses or so as we kind of drop in and out of it. The whole thing is, this whole chapter is only like 19 verses long. But again, we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about Chapter 6 because it's kind of what happens in Chapter 6 is kind of a big deal. If you read it, you probably saw that. There's a big moment that happens in Chapter 6, but it doesn't get celebrated. There is like zero time spent on this big moment that all of Nehemiah so far had been really building up to. And then it gets 18 words right in the middle of the text, or right a little over halfway through the text. But we'll kind of get that as we kind of get going. So again, just drop a quick hello. Let me know you're watching. I greatly appreciate it. At any point, I don't care. Interrupt. I'll get sidetracked, and we'll just get back on. We'll get back on course. But I only anticipate keeping you here for about 7-10 minutes, something like that. But obviously, you guys can log off whenever you want. I do see the little number goes down, so I know when people leave. I just don't know who's leaving. But anyway, that's how that goes. So Nehemiah Chapter 6. If you hadn't had a chance to read it yet, it kind of starts off this way. And there's a couple of things that I think are really, really good about this chapter. Some of it is certainly maybe dealing with discouragement that we kind of got a couple of chapters ago with Nehemiah chapter 3. With kind of what was going on when everybody was trying to kind of come against Nehemiah and try to stop the work that he was trying to do. And so there's a little bit of that continuing on here in Chapter 6. And so when you get to verse 1, you see now when Sanballat and Tobiah, which are names we've heard before, and Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach in it. So here's just a side note that Nehemiah that they finished building the wall, that there's no breach left in it. And then kind of parentheses, although up to that time I had not set up the doors in the gate. So it's not quite done yet. The wall's completed, but the entirety of the project isn't done. They haven't put the gates in place yet. And then it says, verse 2, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me saying, come and let us meet together at Hakaphirim in the plain of Ono. But they intended to do me harm. And so here's these guys that have been battling against him, from the get-go. Didn't want him to do this because it's inflicting, it's kind of causing, some harm on their reputation and what they, their lands. And so they're trying to get him to come meet them. Kind of saying that, hey, we want to meet in a neutral site. It's not even going to be right around here, but it's still on their terms. And even though it seems like a neutral site, Nehemiah sees through it exactly for what it is. But they intended to do me harm. He sees that this is a trap, that he can't give in to this thing that they're asking him to do. And it would be really convenient if all of the stuff that we weren't supposed to do was called oh no. I think that we would not do as many wrong things in our lives if there was some big sign, if there was some big label on it that says oh no, and we would be able to avoid that. And so for whatever reason, I don't think it was the name. I think it's that Nehemiah prays, and he was a praying person. And so he recognized this for what it was. They didn't want to meet with him. They didn't want to interact with him. They didn't want to kind of talk to him. They didn't want to encourage him. They wanted to set him up. And then it goes on to that, and it kind of talks a little bit about how he tried to continue to set them up. And then it says in verse 3, and I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. And I think that's the biggest, maybe the biggest thing that we think about when it comes to this whole series, the good work, is this great work, this good work that it is we're supposed to be doing. What do we stop doing? What good work do we stop doing to do all the little minor things that are not as good, that are not as great, that are not as effective, that are not as kingdom building or kingdom minded? There's a lot of stuff that we do in place of the good work that we're supposed to, that God's called us to do. And so here he is. He says, I'm doing this great thing. I can't stop it. There's none of this stuff, nothing else is important when it comes to this thing right here. And this really goes back to what he'd said a couple of chapters ago when he says, hey, remember why you're doing this, for your families and your children and your wives. And, remember the reason you're doing this. And again, because it was never about the wall, it was always about the people. And so it's a reminder to them. And so here he is just kind of reinforcing that idea that he's doing something great. It's not the building of the wall. It's what the building of the wall represents. And he's saying, what I'm doing, I can't stop doing. I have to continue what it is that I'm doing. But it doesn't end there, unfortunately. Verses 4 and 5, and it says, and they sent to me 4 times in this way. So repeatedly. So they sent it, and then again, and then again, and then again. They sent it to him 4 times in this way. The same thing. Hey, come down and meet me. Friday Night Live. There you go. But it's Thursday night. Thursday Night Live. TNL. Now you got me all sidetracked, but I said that would be okay. And so they sent me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. Hey, come and meet us. No, I can't stop doing this good work. Come and meet us. No, I can't stop doing this good work. Come and meet us. I can't stop doing this good work. Come and meet us. I can't stop doing this good work. And it says, and then finally, in the same way, Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant. And so they kind of upped the game a little bit, and they sent his servant with an open letter. And the idea with it being open is just that it wasn't private. Normally, when you would send a letter, you would seal it, and only the person who was sent it would open it. But Sanballat wanted everyone to see what was going on because he's trying to kind of defame Nehemiah, and he wants to kind of cut him down. And so he leaves it open so that anybody can kind of see it and then kind of come be part to it. And so I think we have to remember in this one is that the enemy is going to be persistent, and then like Nehemiah, we have to continue to be resistant. You see how those words kind of sound alike there? The enemy is going to be persistent, but we have to remain resistant if we're going to rise above or not fall victim to whatever it is the accuser, the enemy, is trying to get us to fall into. We have to continuously fight against it and fight against it and fight against it. Fighting against it once won't be enough because you're going to get tempted, or you're going to not hear from God, or you're going to think that God is silent. Well, it's because he's not changed his mind from what he said earlier. Or all of this stuff is going to tell us that, hey, we should stop doing it now, because surely if it was once or twice or 3 or 4 times, clearly God is in this. How many times have we done something to God? If you tell me this again, then I'll do it. And I think we probably all do that to an extent. And so here he says, he remains consistent because he knew what it was he was supposed to do. He knew he was supposed to build the wall. There was a great work he was doing. Nothing else was important. And we'll kind of come back to that one more time. So the enemy's going to be persistent. We have to remain resistant. And then you get verses 6 through 10. 6 through 9, actually. And I think the enemy is going to be clever. If you're going to get tricked into doing something you're not supposed to do, if you're going to get tricked into coming down off the wall and not doing the good work, the great work that God has called you to do, it's going to be something that's clever, or that seems like it makes sense. And so what Sanballat kind of accuses him of, it says, hey, I know that you're building the wall. This is summing up verses 6 through 9. He says, I know that you're building the wall so that you can make yourself king of this area. And I know that you've already hired prophets to proclaim you as the king of this area. And all of this stuff is made up. And Nehemiah responds to him the same way. He says, you made all of that up. None of that is true whatsoever. It's all a fabrication. It's all a farce. You made it up all in your mind. And I think that's part of, again, he's going to tempt us with the things that we want to do. And we're going to have to know what it is God's called us to do to stand against that. And then in verse 10, it gets very, very personal, I think, for Nehemiah. A prophet comes to him. Now, when I went to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delilah, the son of Methabel, who was confined to his home, for whatever reasons, he was confined to his home, gives us that thing. And he says, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. And the rest of verse 10, let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. And so here it is right here. it would make sense at this point for Nehemiah to go, you know what? Here's a prophet telling me that I'm going to be killed if I continue to do what I'm doing. And the prophet is giving me a way out. That makes sense. Let me go run to the house of God. Let me go run to the temple, to the place of God where I have safety. And God would protect me. Surely that's what God wants for me to do. It makes sense, huh? Because it's all the right things. The prophet said it. We're going to go to the house of God. But Nehemiah sees through this for what it is. He sees beyond what's going on here and recognizes that this is a trap. For one, if he goes into the house if he knows the truth, this is going to fall into a trap. For one, if he goes into the house of the Lord, if he goes into the temple with a prophet, he's going to be basically giving credence to what Sanballat accused him of in verse 7. Hey, you got prophets ready to announce you as king. If he walks into the temple with that prophet, then he's setting the stage for, hey, I saw it, Nehemiah, go in there, let the king know, let the true king know, the real king know, Artaxerxes, that Nehemiah is definitely looking to overthrow you because I saw him go into the temple with a prophet, even though Nehemiah thinks he's doing something to protect himself. The second thing, and so you have to be aware of what it is that's going on in your life. And I think part of that is being prayerful. That's what Nehemiah was. He constantly saw these things for what they were because he was in constant communication with God. In verse 9, he says, but oh God, strengthen my hand. And then he prays again in verse, a little bit later on, verse 12, he says, and I understood that God had not sent him. He wouldn't have understood that unless God had said, that's not for me, don't do that. The second thing I think is you have to know why God has called you to something. And God has not called us to save our own skin. There was an allowance in the temple where you could, and you go a little bit farther back in the Old Testament, where if you wanted safety, you could go to the temple and you could grab hold to one of the kind of the statues out front, and it was a safe place. You'd kind of mark yourself as kind of safe. It's almost like, hey, tag, I'm it, whatever else. That kind of idea. You'd mark yourself in safe. And so he's a little bit right in this, but you couldn't go into the temple to do that. But because Nehemiah knew truth, he knew what you could and could not do as not a priest, as not one of the Levites who could go into the temple, into the holies, whatever else. But he also knew what it was he was called to do. And he was never called to save his own skin. Everything Nehemiah has done has put him at risk, has put him out front where he's in trouble. And so I think that's an important thing we need to recognize is God has not called us to perseverance, but he has called us to a life lived for his glory. And that's something that is a really, really tough lesson to learn, the life that we're supposed to live. And so that's the second thing. And the last thing I kind of mentioned already, that you just have to pray through. Verse 9, verse 12, Nehemiah was in constant communication with God. And so God was telling him, hey, this is not the right thing that I want you to do. This is not what's important. And had Nehemiah given in to any of that, verse 13, it says, for this purpose he was hired. It says that the prophet was hired so that I should be afraid and that I would act in this way. I would sin, go into the temple so that they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. And I think that our witness as followers of Christ is hugely important. I don't mean that we need to be 100% living by what people around us say. We're not trying to live for the approval of men, but of God alone. But if we're going to witness in the world we live in to those people, then we have to be above reproach. We have to be consistent with our message. We have to realize that we put ourselves on the back burner and seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be granted into us. And so that's a part of how we have to live life, so that we don't fall into sin, so that we don't do the wrong things, so that we don't live for ourselves, so that we don't do little things that have a big impact and affect the way the world sees us as followers of Jesus Christ. It's hugely important that we're able to witness and minister in the world that we live in, and for us to be able to do that requires that we live above reproach, that we live a certain way. And so that's kind of what's going on there. And then verse 15 is kind of you would think would be the high point of Nehemiah. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month Elul in 52 days. And that's it. 18 words talks about the finishing of the wall. And what has been the culmination, everything has been, to this point, building the wall is marked in 18 short words. And then he moves on to talking about the enemies again. And I think that this is really, really important. They do celebrate the wall a few chapters from here. In chapter 12, they actually celebrate the wall. But because Nehemiah doesn't end there at verse 15, with this great work of God, that God accomplished something great. If it ended there, that would be great. God did something miraculous in his people, and they completed this daunting task in 52 days, this huge wall around the city in 52 days. But it doesn't end there, and it doesn't end there, probably because you already know, it's something I've said before, it was never about the wall. It's never about the wall. It was always about the people of God. And so the rest of Nehemiah, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 is about the people of God becoming who they're supposed to be. The wall is completed. It was just a symbol of the people that were that lived in the city. It represented the people of God who were broken and in shambles and full of shame. And now the wall is rebuilt, and now he can work on building the people, what it was always about from day one. And so the next couple of chapters, 7, 8, 9, and 10, is really the rebuilding of the people before we get to celebrating the wall, because you really can't celebrate until the people of God have been restored, not the wall of Jerusalem has been restored. And so that's really That's really Nehemiah chapter 6. Kind of in a quick nutshell. I don't know how long that was. I didn't time it, but it's somewhere around, that might be somewhere around 15 minutes or so. I think I told you 7 to 10, and I think I'm probably somewhere around 15 to 17. Just add 10 minutes to anything I say for the most part. But anyway, so thanks for being here for Nehemiah chapter 6. This weekend, we're right back on chapter again, Nehemiah chapter 7. And as far as we know, we don't have anything else planned or scheduled. There's no other guest speakers coming in that's going to kind of throw us off. But if we do, we'll keep tweaking and evaluating. If you got something different from Nehemiah chapter 6, I'd love to hear it. Like if there's an insight that I missed, there's more in there. There's a great part that I think is in there about they tried to build up Tobiah to make him out to be this great guy, but Nehemiah just didn't buy it. There's a great story in that one as well. But maybe you found something different in Nehemiah chapter 6. I'd love to hear it. Shoot me a message, comment here if you've got a quick one, and we'll follow up. We'll go from there, or pull me aside on Sunday and let me know, hey, I also saw this in Nehemiah chapter 6. But whatever it is, I hope that you're enjoying our summer series through the book of Nehemiah. This great work that Nehemiah did in rebuilding the people of God. So be sure you're here next on Sunday morning as we pick up chapter 7, and we'll be right back into the thick of the series, kind of at the midpoint, and we're looking at the downward slope for the rest of Nehemiah. So thanks for being out here tonight. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for coming to Thursday Night Live. I greatly appreciate it. It's probably just as funny as Saturday Night Live. I haven't seen it in a while. But it had stopped being funny a while ago. Maybe it's good again. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for playing along. Thanks for chatting. So glad you guys are part of the BNC family. You got a couple of days to go catch up on chapter 6 and read chapter 7. Chapter 7 is a little longer, I think. And we look forward to seeing you on Sunday morning for I4 at 9:30, and then for service at 10 o'clock. Thanks, BNC family. Have a good night, and we will talk at you soon. We'll talk at you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.